All right, we're live. And we're going to wait a minute to see if everybody gets here. If you are in the chat and you would like to say something, make yourself known, please type something. You're free to ask questions throughout this whole lesson today. You will not be held. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like a technical, funny term for doing something bad. You'll not be penalized for any unlawful questions asked of DAWJunkie today. Let me see if I can bring up a chat window here. In Restream, which you guys cannot, or OBS, which you guys cannot see. Maybe I could put it up here. Can I put it up here? I would like to put it up there, even though you can't see what I'm talking about. All right, let's put it down here. Hey, Jim. Thank you for coming by. Thank you for being part of the Masterclass. We're going to start here in a jiffy. As the kids say today, they don't say that. All right, if anybody is in the chat and they want to ask any questions, feel free. Jim, if you have any questions, feel free to fire away as we go along. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the Masterclass Week 3. We're going to be talking about EQ and effects in this lesson today. So if just so you know, if you're watching this recording, if you show up live, you can ask questions in real time through the chat. And if you're watching the recording and you have any questions, just hit me up with an email at mail@dawjunkie.com. But thank you for being part of this class. Let's get into some stuff. All right, so in the first two lessons, and you can watch these out of order, but they would make the most sense if you go to week 1 first, watch that, then watch week 2, then go over to week 3 today. But it still should make sense. In this lesson, we're going to talk about, in Studio One, this section here called Effects, which is also up here. They add a lot to your song. Effects do. For example, if I have an instrument like a piano, and I record something real quick here. There is that's just a plain old piano, and that sounds pretty nice. Nothing wrong with it, you know. But if you listen to music from bands and different groups and producers and stuff, there's usually something added to a sound to dress it up a little bit, and that's what effects basically do. They dress up the sound. If you click effects here and you have this little icon selected in the top right, which makes everything have a picture representation of it. You can see that you have devices here. And these devices add something to your sound. Like, here's an old school device called a rotor, which organs typically use. and you can see it's actually spinning in there. It gives it a sound like an organ, but let's see how it sounds on piano. So you get the idea? That's an extreme example of what I'm talking about with effects. A lot of times what effects are used for is to just get that sound, whatever sound you have, sounding good with the other instruments that are playing in the song. Like for example, I'm going to pull that effect off of there. And by the way, if you want to get back to all the effects you have in a certain instrument, you just open the inspector up here, this eye. I use this a lot because it gives a lot of detailed information. The inspector allows you to see tons of things that are going on in that track. Now, whatever track is highlighted, the inspector will be basically showing all the stuff for that track. I only have one track, so all this information is for this track. Now, I don't want you to get overwhelmed by this information. It's information that's valuable, but you might not need to know 99% of it. The only thing I want to show you right now is where the effects go when you drag them onto a track. When you drag an effect onto a track, and just drag it onto that track, it goes into this section here called inserts. Because you just did what it says. Like a lot of these terms in music software is very self-explanatory. It's called an insert because you inserted it into the track. You know, that's the reason. And so if you look under inserts in the inspector, you'll see there's our rotor and there's our EQ. And if you want to get them out of there, you just take down this right arrow here and just go to remove. And they're gone. So let's pull in some drums. I'm going to pull in Impact. I'm going to load up a drum kit here. How about 60s A Go-Go? And I'm just going to play a little beat in. We'll put some hi-hats in there too. It's terrible. Let me redo that whole thing. Here we go. All right, cool. So we got drums in there. And I want to play both back now, and let's hear how they sound together. Okay, now what I think about this is, if you listen to it, the drums are a little harsh. You know, they're like, the snare drum is very dry. It means it doesn't have anything really echoey or reverby added to it. So it sounds a little too harsh in the song. So what I would like to do is have that snare drum ring out more. And I'm going to use an effect called reverb to do that. Watch, if we go to Impact and we open up our mixer down here, which we learned about last week, mix. You can see now all the tracks of the song. Now you can see Impact has 7 tracks that it added. When you pull in impact, gosh darn it, as they say. Let's do that again. You guys couldn't see my screen. So let's go to the mixer and click mix down here. And you'll see now that there's our piano track at the top. That's track 1. And then our drums have 6 mixer channels added to them, or 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's because when you pull in impact, this instrument that comes with Studio One smartly makes a separate mixer track for each separate drum, or some of them are grouped together, but it makes 7 or 8 mixer channels so you can adjust specific drums differently. And we'll see when we play it back, the snare drum is probably coming through one of these mixing channels down here, and the bass drum is coming through another mixing channel. And all that means is it's just a lane in the software that the sound is coming through, and it's separated out in a very cool way so we can edit certain drums without editing the whole drum kit. Like, I want to add this reverberation effect to the snare drum. I don't want to add it to the whole kit. So if we hit play, let's watch the meters here and see which one is the snare drum. Okay, looks like this one, because every time the snare hits, this goes up. Let's solo it and see if it's just the snare coming through. Oops. I just want to solo just that one. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's just the snare coming through there, which is great. So now we can add an effect just to that snare drum. And I'm going to go into effects. There's a cute little reverberation plugin called MixVerb, and I'm just going to chuck that in under inserts for that track. And now we got to sound like that. Now let's hear how that sounds with everything else playing, if that's more like what we want. Here's all the instruments. It sounds better, but I'm going to raise the volume of the snare now that the reverb's on. And it does reverberate out, but I want it to reverberate out more. So let's change the size of this fake room. See, MixVerb is actually saying, what's the size of the fake room that we're pretending this drum is reverberating in? That's what size is here. So if we increase that, listen, ooh, 34, it sounds good. But if I turn it all the way up, listen to that. That's a lot. So let me bring this down to like 34. That sounded pretty good. And let's hear how that sounds with everything else. Same thing with this hi-hat. I think the hi-hat's coming in this channel. Yeah, that's pretty harsh too. Let's add some reverb to that. Increase the size and lower the volume of that hi-hat. I think it's a little too loud. And hear how it sounds with everything else. All right, a little too much reverb on that hi-hat. So let me back it down a little bit. And while it's playing, I'm going to mess with the controls and see if I could get it just sounding good. Nice. All right, so now we got a piano and we got some drums in there, and the drums have some effects on them. Now let's go up to our piano, because our piano is a little plain now. And I want to show you something. If you're using the Studio One built-in instruments, like Presence and Mai Tai and some of the other ones, they have built-in effects in that actual virtual instrument. Like we don't have to go drag one into the inserts for that instrument because it already comes with it. That's and they sound good. And that's a pretty cool bonus for some of these instruments. Like, let me just show you what I'm talking about. This is our piano. It's using an instrument called Presence. If you go down to this Effects A and Effects B, these are all built-in effects to that instrument. So we don't have to come over here and pick one of these and add them to a track. We can if we want, but let's see what the built-in instruments sound like. I'm going to go to Effects A, and I'm going to add a reverb that's built in. And I'm going to solo track 1 just so we can hear the piano with and without the reverb. Here it is with the reverb. Here's without. All right, we turn it on. All right, so it's not adding too much, but watch what happens if we turn mix all the way up. All mix is the amount of reverb or amount of effects you're adding to a specific track. Okay, Michael, I'll answer that question in a second. Thanks for asking it. Okay, listen to how this sounds with the reverb turned all the way up. It's too much. And if we put the size all the way up, check this out. It's actually a cool effect if you wanted to have this atmospheric, like ambient, mystical meditation type music, but we're not making that for this song. So I'm just going to back down the size. I'm going to keep it kind of high, back down the mix, and let's see if we can get it sounding pretty cool. I like it there, but let's hear how it sounds with the drums. I think it sounds cool. Now, that's just reverb, right? There's delay, there's this thing called modulation, and then if we hit Effects B, we have other ones like equalizer, distortion. Like, watch what happens when I put distortion up. It's exactly what it sounds like it's going to do. It's going to distort the sound. It's great for guitars, but maybe not for piano. So here it is on piano. Probably not what we want, right? It's a little harsh. But for, I don't know, an electric piano, you want to dirty up a little. I like dirtying up sounds, personally. It's not going to fit this song. And what does a gator do? Well, think of a gate as something that opens and closes, right? That's all it's doing in music. A gate in audio is just something opening and closing at a certain rate or whatever the effect, the controls of that effect have. A lot of times people use a gate for voiceovers and vocals, which means every time the person's speaking and you could hear his voice or her voice, the gate's open, the audio can come through. Every time the person's quiet, or like this might be like a DJ on the radio. Every time the person's quiet, the gate turns on and slams down and doesn't let any sound through. So you can't hear any stupid background noise or hiss or the sound of the studio. It's only when the person's talking, the gate opens, and only when the person shuts up and the program or the gate thinks it's supposed to be silent that it slams everything down and doesn't let anything through. So gates have a purpose like that, but they could have cool effects too. Like, let's see what this gator does when we turn it on with the piano. Well, let's turn off the distortion first. So it kind of chops up the sound a little bit. So it actually sounded pretty cool. I'm going to leave the gate on just to make things different. And then I want to show you this effect here. It's called EQ. EQ is what you think it is. You know, you've been using EQ your whole life. In your car, on the radio, there's treble and bass. That's what an EQ is. If you put up the signal on the right, it's treble. When you put up the signal on the left, that's bass. Bass is low, trebles are high. And then all the stuff in the middle is called mids. Makes sense? So if you look at this, you can see I raised the stuff on the right. So quick quiz, is that going to raise the treble or the bass? Treble. I'm only preemptively answering because I know there's a lag in the live stream. Otherwise, I'd be waiting a while. Plus, you guys might be saying, Steve, that's such a simple question. Ask us something harder. So we raised the treble of the EQ, and here's what it sounds like with the EQ on and with the EQ off. Check it out. It's bright with the EQ on. When it's off, it's a little softer here. A little more softer and subdued. EQ on, brighter. And I wanted that brightness because it fits better with the drums. Okay, now we have a question in the chat. Michael asked, how do I keep the original track and then record over it? Like he's talking about, at least I think he is, on these drums, when I hit record, I could play stuff like that, and it didn't destroy the original drums I had. Like, check it out. Those are all the tons of like all that stuff I just threw in there on my keyboard. It kept the original track while I did that. Watch. Didn't record over it. Okay. Let me undo that. But let me put in maybe a tom-tom or something like that. It just has wacko stuff. Horns. I'll put a clap in there so you can see what I'm saying. All right, so I'm going to hit record. All right, so I put in, I think I hit the wrong key. I put in a bunch of notes, and then I just hit Q. If you hit Q after you record something, it puts them all on beat. So here. It does it automatically by default. If you're using an instrument like a virtual instrument, that means this is an instrument track now. This is not an audio track. On an audio track, it'll probably behave differently, and I'll mess with that. We'll record something into the mic. Excuse me. I drank too much coffee before we started. So on an instrument track, the default setting is not overwrite, but to write. It doesn't overwrite the old track. It writes along, mixes it. It mixes in with the old track, the original track. So you can keep looping and keep adding notes in like one by one, and it will not erase the original track. So on an instrument track, that's the default setting. Here's where you can change that. If you go to Studio or View, go to View, and go to the Record panel. Okay, now you have this thing at the bottom of the screen. And here is where you can change that setting. Check it out. See, this is set for record mix. And that's for instrument, loop, record. So if I'm looping, and you can see I am looping. I have the loop on up here, and it goes back to the beginning every time it gets to the end. And it's rolling through the loops. On record mix, I can play something, and it will add it right into that track, that same track. You could change that here to record specific takes, which actually put everything you do on a new track, and then you could pick the take you want. Like if I wanted to play a whole different bunch of piano riffs, I could loop it and record takes, and then pick the take I like. In fact, I'll show you how that works. Let's go into Presence, and a guitar, go to a Telecaster, and go to Telecaster Full. And I'll just play some, I'll change this now to record takes. And I'll play this and loop it a couple times, and you'll see that it's recording different takes. Oh, let me play all the instruments so we could hear everything. And I'll do one more. and I hit stop. Now you can see it's only going to play that last take. Well, let me hit Q and quantize everything. And it'll just play that last take over and over. So you can see now it's not doing what I was originally doing. What Michael wanted was record mix. If I switch it to record takes, it records everything you do separately. Now, record takes is cool because check if it's what you're looking to do. Because check this out now. You see this little hamburger, these little hamburger lines here? That's what those are called when lines are on top of each other, in case anybody doesn't know. It's like a hamburger menu. If you click the little hamburger menu here, you can pick each one of the takes. Like, let's say take 1. Now this switches it to the first thing I played. How about take 2? And let's go to take 3. All right, I'll keep take 2 for now. So that is what the difference between these two on an instrument loop. If you're recording audio, you have options over here. Like, watch. I'll record my voice. Check 1, 2. And I'll keep it on replace mode. So here it is on replace. This is on replace. I'm not gonna hear this when it records over itself, cause it will replace it. And now I'm recording again, and it's not gonna listen to me anymore, cause it's gonna record over myself. Okay, so I just did 2 there. And you can see it actually replaced the original one. I don't think we have takes. Oh, yeah, we do have takes. So I could play the first one with takes. This is on replace. I'm not going to hear this when it records over itself, because it will replace it. This is on replace. I'm not going to hear this when it records. And if I do take 2, and now I'm recording again, and it's not going to listen to me anymore, because it's going to record. And that's cool. So you can pick the take you want. I'm just checking for something. Give me a second. All right, I'll just show you the last option here. If we put takes to layers, check this out. Oh, well, let's try with replace off. Let's try replace off. It was a toggle. Testing 1. Oops, I'm recording. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2, 3, 4. All right, so what did that do? Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. I don't know. I thought it was going to act different, to be honest. But I hope that I answered your question, Michael. I gotta get rid of that. I gotta look into that. I thought it was going to actually record over it, and we couldn't get the original one back. But it looks like everything's recording the takes, which is cool. I don't mind. But what I would recommend, Michael, is use that record panel. Go to Studio or View, Record Panel, and that is how you set up those settings. Okay. To answer that question. All right, so in explaining that, I added a Telecaster here. So why don't we add some distortion to the Telecaster, some more effects. So let's play the Telecaster. Studio One, under Effects, has a very cool guitar amp simulator called Ampire. So if I drag that onto the track, now we have a Marshall amp head with stomp boxes. It's very cool. And if you click this little menu up here, these are the different layers that Ampire has. It actually is using this 4x12 cabinet, which we can change to another cabinet if we want. And that's what this top layer here turns on and off the cabinet. The middle one turns off on and off the head settings. Oh no, the head settings always stay on. The only thing you can turn off and on is the stomp boxes, which are still there. You just can't see them. Clicking this allows you to see the stomp boxes, and clicking this one allows you to see the cabinet if you wanted to do that. And then you can adjust mic position, how close it is to the amp, which type of mic you're using, whether you're using 2 mics or 1. It's very cool stuff. So let me just bring it back to default settings and hear how it sounds. All right, definitely sounds like a Marshall going through some effects. If we go and click the menu up here, we can see different options, like what's American Overdrive. All right, how about a lead sound, like British Blue? All right, instead of a lead, how about a clean sound, like American Phase? What's that? All right, that sounds somewhat pleasant. So you can mess with all these knobs, you know, and change the settings in the head. Like I think there's too much treble on this, so let's pull the treble down right here. Or maybe this, oh, this is the channel it's using, I think. Yeah. Yeah. So turn the treble down. And what's this intensity? Let's turn that and see what it does. Oh, that's the speed of the wobble. You can even put reverb on it and different things. So these are effects, all these things I'm messing with. There's a lot of knobs and stuff I'm turning, and you might not know what they all do. So there's 2 things I recommend to handle that problem. Number one, you should, if you don't understand the word that's under the knob, you should probably look it up and get it cleared up to your satisfaction. Maybe watch a YouTube video or ask me or something. Like that knob said intensity. Well, say you don't know what the word intensity means, look it up. Okay? Second thing is, even if you know what the word means or not, turn the knob and just see what the hell it does. I always say in my courses, you can't break this stuff. It's software. That amp, I don't have to it's not rented. It's not a $10,000 amp that I don't know the Who used on stage, and you're renting it in your studio and you don't want to break it, so you're very careful with it. Being careful, at least when you're using this stuff. Turn those knobs all the way to the left and all the way to the right and just see what the hell they do. I highly recommend that. I'm a big fan of that. You can't break anything, so get brave and turn knobs. And do that for every one of these plugins. Like if I pull in a reverb into that guitar track, I'm just going to pull in room reverb here. So this is room reverb over on the right. I'm going to pull it on that Telecaster. This is like a big boy version of that mix verb we looked at earlier. Look at all this confusing crap on the screen. These graphs and lines and dots and rooms and squares and all these knobs, asymmetry, distortion, plane, geometry, character. What the hell does all this stuff mean? You know what? Who cares? Turn the knobs and just listen, okay? And then as you learn more, you can start to figure out what this stuff does. I mean, there's synthesizers that I own that are just insane with settings. Like, I'll show you. Let me pull in Anna 2 here. It's a new synth I was playing with the synthesizer. I hope it activates. Come on. There we go. Look at all this crap. And then there's menus inside of this with more crap. What does all this stuff do? What do all these buttons do? What do these knobs mean? You got to learn them one by one. Just turn them. You can't break anything. You get what I'm saying. So I'm basically trying to say, don't be overwhelmed by anything you run into in this software. Like, watch, even when I click an event up here, what do all these things mean here? What are all those functions? Who cares? Don't worry about it just yet. I'll let you know when they're important. Or you can look them up on your own. But if you're following with me, I just want you to know you could get 90% of the way there without knowing what 90% of the functions in your software do. Just stick to the basics, learn one thing at a time, and you'll be just fine. And you'll actually enjoy the journey. So let me get that reverb off of the Telecaster, because unless it sounds good, let's hear how it sounds. I think it's a little too much, but let's hear how it sounds with the rest of the instruments, actually. Between the Telecaster doing its little speed thing and the piano doing that gating, it's too much. I'm going to take the gator off of the piano, so the piano's normal again. Let's hear how it sounds. Let's get rid of that room reverb. Okay, cool. So let's add a bass in there now. Let's see if we can find a bass inside this Anna synthesizer. Like a bass that shouldn't really fit in that song. Let's see what we got. Okay, that's good. It's good for this example. All right, watch what I'm going to do here. Okay. Try it again. Almost. Try one more time. Cool. All right, let me see what else we got in the chat real quick. Like when you added the hi-hat after you already had the other drums recorded. Yeah. We went over that. If you load Impact into a track, it will automatically be set up to just record on top of whatever you already have there. You just hit the record button, play more drums over it, and it will go right in. I think the chat has a lag, but hopefully that answered your question, Michael. All right, so check it out. I put this really fat bass in here now. So I want to get into the second part of today's lesson, which is EQ, because I use a lot of EQ, and it's one of the most used, I think, effects and most useful effect in music production, because it's not just raising treble and bass. A lot of times, you're basically carving out. You have to carve out the part of that signal that you want to use in the song. Because if you have too many instruments playing in a song, like a bad producer, or mixing engineer, recorder, musician, or whatever, anybody who's releasing music, a bad one might allow all those instruments to just play at such a level that they're all fighting with each other. Like you might have a bass drum fighting with a bass guitar, fighting with the bass of an organ, fighting with the bass of something else, and everything's going to sound like mud. So an EQ is there to not only raise treble and bass, but to be like surgical. Think of an EQ as performing surgery on your track and cutting out the parts of that track you don't want to make room, or parts of that instrument you don't want to make room for other instruments so everything can breathe. And then when they all come together, after everything is carved out properly, it sounds perfect and full. So I made that crazy bass for a reason. I made a crazy bass, really full, and I put an EQ on the track right here. Now, cool thing about the EQ in Studio One is when you use it and play whatever instrument you put it on, it shows all the frequencies that are playing in the back behind the EQ. Check it out. See all those lines? This is a bass, right? I just wanted to use it for bass, but you can see that even though it's a bass, it's such a full sounding bass. It goes across the whole spectrum of sounds all the way into treble. Now, I don't want that in treble because I want to use it as a bass. So I could grab this purple dot over here. You can only see a little piece, a little half of it. I'm going to grab this purple dot, and this is called a high cut. And what it's going to do is cut everything in that purple shaded area, going to cut it out of the signal. So I just pulled all the highs out. Listen to how this sounds now. Much different. You might have to have headphones on to hear that, or a good speaker. It's very bassy. But with the other instruments, that might be all I need and want. Okay, because the piano, it's got its own frequencies. And the drums have their own frequency. See, I think there's too much when I let everything out. Too much going on. See, now I was dragging that while I was listening to the song, and I stopped when everything started to sound good. And this is what I recommend you do with EQ. You grab a little point and you drag it, and you stop when things start sounding good. Now, on its own, this is not going to sound special. It might even sound bad. Listen. Okay, it's all right, but there's nothing special about it. It doesn't matter. All you care about when you're making a song with multi-instruments, more than one instrument, all you care about is how they all sound playing together. And that bass sounds good with all the treble cut out of it. So I just did surgery with my EQ here, and I basically lopped off the whole top part of this dude here, all right? From his torso up. He is just legs down now. So that's the bass, okay? Let's now listen to the song and see if there's any other instruments that are either too full or maybe not full enough. And then we can use the EQ to beef them up. Let's listen. I actually think there's a little too much piano going on, because piano is a very full instrument too. Maybe we just want the high part of the piano and not so much the bass, because we have a bass synthesizer playing the bass. So let's throw an EQ on the piano and take a look, and then let's start dragging things around and see if we could sound better. Now, on the bass synthesizer, I pulled the purple. I'm going to double click that and turn that off. For this one, you want to pull the red. This is a low cut, where the other one was a high cut. Now watch what happens when I have it all the basses chopped out of the piano, how this is going to sound. That's just the piano playing. Could hardly even hear it. Sounds like a toy piano or a Casio or something like that, right? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to play all the instruments together now, and I'm going to move this and see where it sounds the best. It might sound the best off, and then we won't worry about it. We didn't make it sound any better, so it's too bad. But I'm going to just start this low and pull it up and see if we can make it sound better. With all the other instruments playing. Here we go. I think it sounds good there. It's not fighting with the bass. Let's try it again. So the bass is happy. I could hear the bass. The bass drum's not fighting with anything really. The piano is we're just playing the mids and the top. So here's how it sounds solo. It's a little thin, but with the bass, it sounds full, doesn't it? I'm going to show you one more trick, which I love. Then, Michael, I'm going to answer your questions in the chat room there. All right. So check this out. This is a trick or a technique that a lot of electronic music producers use, and people usually wonder how they get this type of sound. I want to show you a technique called side chaining. It's really neat. It's essentially this. Say you have two instruments fighting with each other. You know, the bass drum of a drum kit is fighting with the bass guitar, meaning when they both play at the same time, you can't really hear either of them because it just sounds like mud. Well, in electronic music, a lot of times you want to hear that kick drum, that boom, 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 boom. If you put enough other instruments playing at the same time, that kick drum gets lower and lower and lower in the background, and then you don't have that hard hit of the bass drum that you need in electronic music. And not a lot of people know how to get out of that and stop that. You could do it with a technique called side chaining. Check this out. It's really fun. If I just play the bass and the drums. All right, I hear the kick drum of the drum kit, but I also hear the bass playing too at the same time. So I want that kick of the drum kit to hit harder, but I don't want to lower the volume of the bass synthesizer because I like it. Well, what I could do is pull in an effect called a compressor, and I'm going to put it on the bass track. So here's a compressor in Studio One. Just throw it on the bass track. Now, what does a compressor do? It does what it says in its name. It compresses a signal. It pushes down a signal. So if a signal gets too loud, the compressor goes, yo, bro, chill, and pushes it back down according to the degree that you want. Well, I want a compressor to tell the bass synthesizer to chill out only when the bass drum of the drum kit is hitting. So check this out. There's a setting in the compressor called side chain up here. If you click that and turn it on, you got to click this arrow, and you got to tell this compressor, all right, what are you trying to do here? Like, what do you want to happen? Well, I know the kick drum of this song is coming through Impact Stereo Channel 1. I know that because if I go to the mixer, and I know that because it usually defaults to that, but if I wanted to confirm it, I go to the mixer, and I hit play, and I can see right here, Impact ST1. It's the kick drum. Okay? So that's how I know. So if I open the compressor again, I want Impact ST1. You just hit send here. And now, every time that hits, it's going to compress the bass. Check it out. I have to lower this knob called the threshold. You hear the bass getting lower every time the kick drum hits? That yellow line is how much the compressor is compressing the synth. So now they're not going to fight with each other because every time that kick drum is hitting, the synth is getting lower just for a split second. And that's what all these settings are in the compressors. How long you want the synth to stay compressed. So don't worry about all these. I don't even know why I brought this up. This is an advanced technique, but it's just too cool. It's just too cool knowing that there's a device that could tell another instrument to chill out only when another instrument is hitting. Anyway, here's how it sounds together now with everything. All right, I think it's hitting too hard, so let's bring the threshold up. Good. So now I can hear the kick drum a little bit more, a little bit better. It's a slight improvement, but anyway. All right, Michael says, like when you added the hi-hat after you already had the other drums recorded. Yeah, I think we went over that. How might you make it sound more like a guitar and less like a keyboard? Maybe the envelope, whatever that is. Is there any way to see all the tracks separately at the same time on the EQ screen? All right, let me answer this one first. How do you make it sound more like a guitar and less like a keyboard? That is all up to the instrument you are using. I'm using a presence instrument, which if I turn off all the effects, it sounds like this. Oops. Which doesn't really sound like a guitar in the first place. So it's hard to take something that doesn't sound like a guitar in the first place and make it sound like a guitar. My best advice for you is play an actual guitar into there and then throw Ampire onto that. I did it this way for the sake of quickness and simplicity. I used a guitar instrument, but I know that those guitar instruments, they don't really sound like guitars. Some of them come close, and I think they actually are sampled, like they actually did sample a Telecaster and get that sound, but it's tough. You know, there is some cool plugins that if you're not a guitar player, like Strum, I think it's AAS. Strum sounds like a guitar, and I think there's an electric version, electric and acoustic. Strum by AAS, Applied Acoustics. I know Native Instruments. Guitar. Not Guitar Rig. It's a plugin. Yeah, like these electric session guitarists. I've heard really good things about them. Let's see if it'll play. Yeah, I think because I'm using my sound card, you guys can't hear it. Yeah, I don't have it set up like that for right now. But that's something to check out. That might do the job for you. So that's what I recommend. It's tough to take something that doesn't sound like a guitar and make it sound like one. You can add effects to a guitar that doesn't sound like a guitar and make it sound different, like more or less like a guitar, or interesting. Like I can make that Telecaster sound more interesting. In fact, I think when I put Ampire on it, that's all it did was make it sound more interesting. I wasn't trying to make it sound like exactly like a guitar. It's not bad, but yeah. So you got to either use a real guitar or buy like a guitar plugin that's meant for that. Very rarely do these instruments that come with like an instrument suite like this, like Presence or something like that, sound really good guitar-y. Next question. Is there any way to see all the tracks separately at the same time on the same EQ screen? No. Not that I know of. So if I open the EQ here, compare? No, that just shows with it on or off. I don't think you could bring multiple tracks into one EQ screen, but you can hit the pin up here. If you hit the pin, that means this one's not going away. And then I could go to open the piano one, and that original one stayed, okay? Whatever you pin means it will not go away when you do something else. So you could pin them all up there and then compare them, like this. But there's no way to make them all appear on one as far as I know. Now we just in the EQing I just showed you guys, I told you how to cut. I showed you how to cut frequencies, but I didn't show you how to boost any. So let's just go over that right now. Like, let's say this guitar is a little weak. I just pulled the treble down. Just ignore that I did that. I did it just for the sake of this example. So say this guitar is playing, but it doesn't have enough treble. It doesn't have enough push or balls. I want to say balls. It doesn't have enough balls. So I could use an EQ. Let me pull an EQ onto that track now. Oh, it's called Pro EQ. That's why I can't find it. I'm going to pull that on the Telecaster track. And I'm going to boost signals now instead of using those cuts. And to boost a signal, just if you want to boost the treble, just grab one of these blue dots that are up by the treble, and you can start moving them. Oops, not that one. That actually boosts the whole top end. Well, you could do that. I'll show you the difference. But this green one will just do a little lump. And then you can move this anywhere you want on the EQ. It doesn't have to stay up here. It's kind of by default up here because it's the high middle frequencies. So it's partly in the mid, it's partly in the highs, it's in the high middle. HM stands for high middle. And let's see if we play that guitar, what happens when we boost certain frequencies. Okay, I'm going to boost the treble. Here's what it sounds like when I boost the mids. No, I actually took so much bass out of that. It's not even a good example. Let's try something on the piano maybe. Or let's add a new instrument. Let's just add a new instrument. Let's go to Presonus and go to Presence and maybe a nylon guitar. So nylon guitar full. And I want to play all the instruments. Say that nylon guitar is not cutting through the mix enough. I can't really hear it. Well, instead of just raising the volume, maybe I could just raise the treble. Let's hear how this sounds now. Much better. So I just boosted the treble. It didn't like this first way I started. Let me just move this a little bit. All right, so I just add a little treble, and that sounds good. If I double-click on any of these dots, it turns it off, or just one click, actually. And this blue one, when you raise this, it doesn't just raise one little point. It makes a whole shelf. This is called a shelf. So this is going to sound really trebly. Because it's just jacking up this whole treble up here. So if I turn that off, try this one. That's a little less. That's way too much. But let's hear how it sounds in the mix with all the instruments playing. All right, so I'm putting the guitar in the left speaker and the piano in the right. Can't really hear the guitar. Let's give it more volume. Okay, I gave the guitar more volume. I don't need the bass in the guitar, so I'm going to pull out some bass. Oh, the treble was not on. Interesting. Okay, that's why I couldn't hear it. Let's bring the volume back down. Try again in the whole mix. All right, let's give the guitar a little more volume. I think it sounds good. If I turn up this treble, let's hear how this sounds. Actually, that shelf doesn't sound bad. Let's give it a little less, but let's see what we got there. So I took out some bass, and I kept the shelf up. That's pretty extreme, but you get the idea. I'm using the EQ now more as a surgical thing, boosting certain frequencies and pulling out certain frequencies to get the sound I want that sounds good in the mix. Good mixing engineers really know how to use their EQ to just basically perform surgery on the song so that everything comes through how it sounds the best, with its best qualities being put forward, so everything sounds good together. You'll know a good mix and a bad mix by the amount of mud. Like if it sounds just like a wall of sound with no real dynamics and you can't really pick out instruments, I think the mixing engineer probably didn't know what he was doing. But if you hear something that sounds crisp and clear and you could clearly hear the bass and you could hear the drums and everything sounds great together, that's well done on the mixing engineer's job. And one of the big tools he has is EQ. So this was more of an introduction to how to use EQ and how to use it as a surgical item, as well as something that just makes everything sound better or pleasant. We touched a little bit on compression. Like compression is great for vocals because a human voice has a lot of variables. Like watch, if I back up from the mic, everything gets lower. If I come closer to the mic, everything gets louder. If I raise my voice, it gets louder. But if I talk real quiet, it gets softer. Like these are all things happening into a mic that a vocalist is doing. A compressor can kind of chill everything out so it's more consistent all the way across. I'll give you a quick example of that and then we'll end off. I'm going to sing a song now to my happy little... I'm going to sing vocals now, my happy little song. Going to make an audio track. Here we go. This is such a happy song. This is such a happy little song. Now I'm whispering, now I'm whispering, now I'm yelling! Okay, I'm sorry if I blew your ears out. I had to do that. I should have warned you, but I had to do that. I want you to look at this waveform now. Then this could be how something happens in the studio. You got basically person's pretty normal. They're a certain distance away from the mic around here. Then they got real quiet. Then they got super loud. Well, that's a pain in the butt now for the mixing engineer. I guess you could just chop up the clips and raise the volume and lower the volume of this. And that we covered that in editing. But I want to show you how to do it all with a compressor. If I pull a compressor now into this channel... and I tell the compressor, all right, when it gets real loud, I want you to take this threshold, we're going to pull it down. I want you to chill out that music when it gets too loud. So I'm going to solo the audio track. This is such a happy song. This is such a happy little song. Now I'm whispering, now I'm whispering, now I'm yelling. See, when I yelled, it didn't blow your ears out that time. If I turn the compressor off, listen to the difference. This is such a happy song. This is such a happy little song. Now I'm whispering, now I'm whispering, now I'm yelling. Ouch, it hurts. So a compressor can chill that out. Happy song. This is such a happy little song. Now I'm whispering, now I'm whispering, now I'm yelling. See, so it's a great tool. Because not only did it lower the yelling, it raised the volume of the whispering. Because I compressed everything down, then I went over here at the very end of the plugin and I said, all right, all the volume that I took down, I want to make up some of that volume. I'm going to make up 2 dBs of that, 2.4 dBs of that volume. So the makeup gain at the end kind of compensates for the amount of sound you took out to give everything a more consistent sound. So a compressor you might think, oh, a compressor is going to make everything quiet. No, it doesn't necessarily make everything quiet. If you take the very end of the chain here and you crank up this makeup volume, because this is the final volume of what the whole track's going to be, this makeup volume. So if you pull volume out of the track and then you make it up at the end, you can raise the lows of a whispering part and then lower the peaks of a screamy part, and you'll get a sound like we have here, which is kind of balanced. This is such a happy song. This is such a happy little song. Now I'm whispering. Now I'm whispering. Now I'm yelling. This is such a happy song. This is such a happy little song. Now I'm whispering. Now I'm whispering. Now I'm yelling. This is such a happy song. This is such a happy little song. Now I'm whispering. Now I'm whispering. All right. You get the idea? So a compressor, think of a compressor as a tamer. It's like a lion tamer. It's like taming this. When the sound gets too crazy, it gets whipped. I know that's a bad picture. I'm not into like animal abuse. It's a bad example, but you get the idea. I have a kitty cat. I love her, man. I take really good care of her. But you get the idea. Something's getting too wild. The compressor's there. It tames it. And it also raises up when everything's too quiet. If everything's too quiet, that makeup gain at the end, if it's turned up, brings up the quiet parts. So compressor is a very cool tool. EQ is a very cool tool. We talked about reverb, giving it like an echoey sound. There's delay, which gives it a really distinct echo. Throw delay on some of your tracks. You'll hear what I'm talking about. And just basically take all the effects in Studio One and chuck them on some tracks and see what happens. All right, let me see if I missed any questions. Is there a way to see? Okay, I think I covered it all. Well, guys, that's going to wrap up today's episode of the Masterclass. I hope that you learned some tools that you can use in your mixes. We basically just scratched the surface of the iceberg, or this is the tip of the iceberg. I don't know what we scratched the surface of. And that is will get you going as far as how to use tools in your toolbox. So feel free to ask me more questions. Let me know if I covered what you wanted to know. And, if you want me to teach something on the next Masterclass lesson, hit me up before next week. Otherwise, I'll see you guys at 2 p.m. next Tuesday. I'm going to create a calendar. So you might get a calendar invite for the Masterclass lessons, because right now it's just an email like an hour before that goes out, and you guys might forget. So I'm going to actually put like a little scheduler together and hopefully have that done by this week. So if you see that and you want to be reminded of Masterclass lessons, just hit OK or accept or whatever. I'll see you next week. Thanks, guys, for hanging. Thanks for buying the Masterclass. And go create some awesome music and send it to me. I want to hear what you do. All right, later. Thank you, Jim. Thanks, Michael. Thank you, everybody. See you next time.